Hi Vera, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Start for the most part. There are other locations, but for the most part, a big portion of this show is set in JFK, which you obviously can't go and film a show in JFK and take over an entire airport. But I do like that you guys have little nods like the giant apple that exists when you come through the American Airlines gate and things like that. For you as a co-showrunner and a creative, what was important of making sure like New Yorkers still had those little things? So we were like, yeah, that is what JFK looks like, despite the logistics of it all.
Yeah, I think it was certainly like a hard line to walk. I mean, there's secretly a part of us were like, could we shoot at JFK? But when we realized that wasn't going to be possible, it was the pieces of like the signage, making sure we had like an incredible production designer and a team behind her that made sure that those small details were correct to what JFK is. And then where we could, finding the pieces of New York, whether it was the background on the tarmac or little pieces of the souvenirs that you can buy. I'm really trying to get that piece. And then I think the documentary piece at the top of each episode that actually was shot in New York, I think that goes a long way in sort of setting a tone and a feel for making it feel like we are like very close to JFK or in that world. But yeah, it was certainly like a tricky thing to do, but hopefully we kind of captured it.
Well, yeah, and I always love shows in New York, not only because I live here, but just because the it is its own character and everything that it is a part of. But when you have a show like this, which the loneliness of the city is kind of a big part of the story, were you excited to tell that with Natasha and like really kind of show that side of New York, or were you guys a little afraid to not let that little tidbit about New York City into a show that is a comedy? Like, how did you guys kind of feel about that side of this?
I think we were totally, it's very intentional. It was that we didn't want to keep it a secret that New York, as busy as it can be one of the loneliest places in the world. And
Mhm.
so we kind of really went kind of headlong into it. And we really talked about it a lot, where what's it like to feel alone in a crowd? What's it like to feel unseen in a crowd? We really made that a big part of what we wanted to be the driving force behind the show.
Yeah, and I do love that it has its outrageous comedy moments, but it also has a lot of grounded, more emotional beats throughout the whole series. For you guys, when you were writing, did you ever have conversations about like, okay, well, do we want it to be more these more outrageous moments, or like how did you find the balance between the two?
Yeah, I mean, we did have a lot of conversations because it was hard when we were pitching and kind of communicating about the show to describe the tone because it is sort of a new tone. It would be hard sometimes for the people to imagine because there's not quite a show that does it in this way. So there was a lot of conversation and then finding the balance. Like if we found ourselves in a part of an episode where it really did take like a was more serious, we tried to insert humor because we do feel like life really is the balance of those two things playing with each other all the time. But it really was intentional. And then also, we had the benefit of Natasha as a kind of juggernaut performer who can do those emotional turns as well as those comedic turns all in the same breath. So we really had the benefit of that in the room as well to be like, okay, we can pull this off.
Yeah, and I also like that all these people are very complicated because it's like at first when I thought she just had a crush on Alex and then it just never panned, I was like, oh my gosh, like relatable. And then it was like, oh no, you made that choice. That's a very different kind of reaction. And the same with like Rory, like he makes the worst choices and then turns around and yells at other people. And it's all so fascinating to kind of see play out when you guys were writing these characters and making them like fully realized, but also people who are making the absolute worst decision they could. How did you guys kind of make sure that there were still elements of them that made us want them to be better people and make the better decisions?
Yeah, I think it was a matter of really tapping into the reality of people. Like, I think even the people making the worst we've all been that person or
Mm.
have friends who are that person who you're like, I love you, but that is a terrible choice. And to me, that is more fun to watch than someone who is purely like purposefully making mistakes. I think people often have good intentions that go awry, and that is in a more, to me, a more interesting world to play in. And it's less binary than like bad and good. I love seeing those come together because that to me is what real life is. No one is one or the other, and it's our jobs as writers to kind of shed light on the reality of that, like that we're not one thing.
Yeah, I can't wait for everyone to get to see the show. I loved it a lot. And thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for meeting with me.
A great one.